Hello, I'm David Zahn of OK Now What, and I'd like to spend some time in this video discussing a concept that you may be somewhat familiar with, and that is the fight, flight, or freeze, but specifically that reaction as it relates to leaving teaching. Now, we're all familiar with the phrase fight, flight, and many of us know it's fight, flight, or freeze. So, what that means is that when we are confronted by something unusual, a potential danger, if we perceive that something is going to be of consequence and of danger to us, we will choose to either fight, combat that potential danger. We'll confront it, we'll try to overcome it. We're not going to avoid the conflict. We feel that we have the mastery, the skills, whatever it requires to overcome that. Or we may make an assessment and choose to leave the situation. That would be the flight, where we remove ourselves from the potential conflict. We decide to live another day and come back to the situation that we were trying to pursue outside of the evidence of that potential danger. Or we may choose to do what's known as freeze. We make a quick determination that we can accommodate this potential danger without too much undue harm. So we choose to either temporarily or maybe even permanently remain in place. Not quite paralyzed, but we've made the judgment that this is not something that requires us to take any different action other than to perhaps coexist. So, what that means is that we will not remove ourselves from the scenario. And in essence, we choose to live with it. Now, if you go back into the human history, this was actually a very positive series of determinations and decisions that the human brain was able to make. It was a defense mechanism. We instinctually were able to determine if something was going to be of potential harm to us or if it was something that we could live with, that it was not going to interfere with our day in and day out hunting, raising families, whatever it may have been back in the day, so to speak. But while this does go back to the so-called reptilian brain, and by that I mean there's this part of our brain called the amygdala, which is the one that makes these very quick assessments, this gut reaction, if you will, as to whether we need to stay and fight, leave, or coexist. Then, in the evolution of the human brain, there was the limbic part of our brain, which ascribed or assigned feelings to those observations we have made. So, first, it was that instinctual amygdala that created the fight, flight, or freeze. Then there was the determination about how we feel about it. That was limbic. It wasn't only until much later that we developed the neocortex, which assigns thoughts to these actions, that allows us to put it into some kind of logic for us to understand and interpret. And that was truly the order of things, thinking being the last of the three. But what sometimes occurs is we have what's known as amygdala hijack. And by that I mean we continue to perceive a danger even when it no longer exists. Perhaps at some previous time in our history, we had some event and it sort of imprinted upon us that, oh, we must avoid that, or this is something not to be pursued. But that's not always the case in what we're doing today. So, in our more sophisticated existence now, we may not be threatened by mastodons or beasts in the jungles or forests, but we still retain this immediate gut reaction to things, this sometimes inappropriately labeled fear of something that doesn't truly present a danger to us. So, drawing this back to being a teacher and how this all ties together, when teachers consider the option of leaving teaching, their thoughts often go to protecting what they have. Well, I have what I perceive to be a relatively secure job. By the way, may or may not be true, but that's the perception. I have a pension that I've built. I have certain union protections in those regions of the country where unions do exist for teachers. There are certain thoughts about protecting what we have. And so it doesn't convert to thinking about, well, what we could potentially gain. Then there are others that will just feel very overwhelmed at the thought of potentially leaving the classroom, leaving their job. And so they'll determine that they're going to put off the decision for another day, another month, another year, and they just don't ever take the initiative, don't ever take action to move forward. And this is really an equivalent of a flight response from making a certain decision. Or they may not be able to correctly determine if things could be better somewhere else, so they stay. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what awaits me. So that would be the freeze aspect of the fight, flight, or freeze. Now, further complicating this decision to potentially leave the classroom for what might even be a more enriching, more rewarding, more fulfilling work life balance, job, career, etc., is that humans have a bias towards risk aversion. They don't want to lose what they already have, even if it is small, minimal, perhaps not nearly as great a gain as they could have if they were to venture into something else. Humans, for the most part, would rather hold on to what they have as opposed to reaching for something more, bigger, better. So, uh, what this happens that when this happens though is that people will not take opportunities to seek better choices for themselves. They'd rather stick with what they have for fear that that may be gone in their attempt to gain more. So, as a teacher, you may be unconsciously sabotaging your own opportunities out of fears that really don't correspond to any real danger, but it's prejudice, a bias, a perspective, things that have been imprinted upon you from years, maybe even decades prior, that you're still carrying with you. So do what you can to avoid the amygdala hijack correctly determining if risk is real or is it just perceived? And if so, what level of risk is really at play? And be sure that your decision making reflects a true understanding of risk, opportunity, payback, etc. And only then can you make the most informed choice and not one that is led by just an instinct that may no longer be accurate, or a fear of failure, or just a determination that as bad as things may be here, at least I know what I'm dealing with. If you'd like to discuss this further and gain some further clarity and maybe a path forward, you can always reach out to me at okaynowwhat.biz calendar and choose to speak with me by selecting chat and chew. Very much want to see you succeed, and I'd love to help you achieve all that you have in the way of potential. Let's talk soon.